Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode number
83.
So, we've been teasing you for a little while, and something important is coming.
Yes, it is. And I don't have to keep it a secret anymore.
Nope.
That's
You
so
want to
nice.
tell them all about it, Emilu?
Yes. So starting May 4th, yes, I know May the 4th, May the 4th be with you, all of those fun things. We are opening a group coaching program for couples. It can be just you or it can be you and your spouse. I know sometimes there may be one spouse that isn't quite ready yet. So obviously both are invited, but we will be having a group coaching program. Once a week, we'll gather for a topic. Greg or I or both of us together will give some instruction, a little teaching about a topic. And you're welcome to ask all the questions about that. And you're also welcome to bring any and all of your own relationship questions about anything happening in your marriage, whether it's conflict, desire differences, communication, how to be friends again, how to partner, what's this eroticism all about, parenting things, all the questions.
Yeah, we're really excited because what we want to do is set a place where it can be affordable to get coaching. And also we have these concepts we've seen over and over again that help couples. And so what you'll get is you subscribe to this, it'll be a monthly subscription, is you'll get a core set of training videos that will go over our core concepts that we're going to do. Because as we talk about a new topic each month, they will always be fundamental to this core concept of how we bring relationships together. And so it really goes over what those concepts are and what we're training to get you set up for success. And then you'll join us each week to talk about these topics. And we're really excited about it.
And we obviously want you to be there live because that's part of being a community and being able to ask questions and get answers and be coached and all of those things. But also you can watch the recordings as well if you can't make it live. We're going to have different days that they're hosted on to try and accommodate different schedules. And if you have questions, you can be emailing them to us. You can be bringing them. You can be putting them in the chat when we're on the calls. The cool thing about group settings and group calls that we've learned is because we as couples fall into so many of the same struggles and same relationship patterns, even if you're not the one asking the questions or the one being coached, there's always so much that you can learn from that experience. So whether you're the one asking or whether you're the one witnessing or watching, there's a lot to be learned because we do struggle in so many similar ways.
So keep your eyes open. It'll come through our email list and we will be able to give you a URL probably next week in the podcast for you to go up and sign up. We would love to have you. So appreciate it. We're going to talk about a subject that we think is really important to the overall framework of marriage. And it's human nature in life. I think when we grow up, we're really set on this fact that we need security, and the unknown or the uncertainty is what really causes us to have angst. And some of us deal with it better than the others. And we all have different ways that we go about dealing with uncertainty. Well, guess what? You go get married to somebody and you've brought in a whole shitload of uncertainty in your life because now you're connected to someone else that's different than you. And this causes the paradox that we love to talk about in marriage, about wanting to belong to yourself, but also wanting to share that life with someone else. And in that brings uncertainty. So today we're going to talk about what it is to be uncertain in a marriage and why that's not bad. That's actually good. And how you can look at it in a way that can help you become better and more connected with your spouse in the midst of uncertainty.
Yes, all of those things. It was interesting growing up in the framework that I did. So much of the religious language was about certainty. And so much of the teaching was about do this and you'll get this, do this and you'll get this. And so I was wired up, maybe more so for the idea that there was certainty and that there was always a way or a plan or a word or a behavior or something that would have a specific outcome. And I think not too long into marriage, it was like, wait a minute. I don't know if this actually applies here because, like you said, you have two different people. And when you bring those two different people together, there is just a level of unknown and uncertainty. How am I going to see this? How are you going to see this? What are going to be your meaning frames for very simple things? For example, I remember our very first fight was about a toilet plunger.
I was right.
And I think we were maybe like a week married or something.
If that.
And very, very poor. And so that's why this was a problem.
We weren't very, very poor. If you can't live off $35,000 a year, you can't live off of anything. What are you talking about?
Okay, we were not in a.
Can I just say something that in our last podcast, this came to as an aha, and this is just another example of the aha. If moms and wives' values tied to nurturing and raising their children, and they have a problem anytime that becomes problematic, because if they say it's a problem, then their worth is diminished. Think for us husbands and providers, that's the same thing, right? So even you just saying we were dirt poor triggered my, what are you talking about? I provided for you just fine. We never had to search for food or didn't have a place to stay. Just an observation. I thought it was quite funny as it comes up still. It's like, now you're touching on my worth. What are you talking about? You want to fight about it?
So we had enough to pay our bills,
Yes.
but not anything extra.
And feed ourselves.
Yes. We had sufficient for our needs.
We never wondered whether we were going to survive or not.
Correct. Except for a toilet plunger.
We couldn't afford it. It wasn't necessarily afford it. We didn't have one.
We didn't have one.
It was late at night.
It was late at night. The
Stores
toilet
weren't
clogged.
open.
They were.
I'm sure they weren't.
Then we had what's the name of that store right around the corner? We had a grocery store right around the corner that would have been
closed.
open. Oh, back to my initial point. My point was toilets clogged. We have a problem. And from your perspective, you're like, let's just borrow my parents. And from mine, I was like, no, let's be able to solve this on our own. We're going to obviously need this again. Let's not borrow. Let's
Okay, come on.
invest.
Time out. Are you doing truly honest with this analysis?
Yeah.
No, I don't think you are.
Okay.
You were horrified that I would go ask my parents for a plunger.
Okay. Tell me more. You're remembering this so differently that I'm like, okay.
It didn't have anything about solving a problem for our future. It was, I can't believe that you would go ask your parents to borrow something so personal.
Okay. I don't remember that at all, but okay.
This is a perfect example of uncertainty.
Yes.
We can't even come to agreement about what the fight was about.
No, we knew we fought. And
anyway, it was a fight over a plunger.
It was a fight over a plunger. There was a conflict of what was the right answer. So this was our first level of uncertainty, because if you believe there's certainty, you believe there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. And as soon as you get into a relationship, you start to bump up into the idea that there are many possible answers and there are many possible ways to view the same situation and circumstance. And that creates a level of uncertainty.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Remember, because when we're courting each other, it's just all bullshit, right? Really. We're doing everything we can to only show the greatest side of ourselves. And we're so Twitter-pated in love, and there's so much of this energy around us. I guess it's Eros energy around us when you're courting.
Yeah.
There's this life-giving energy around us that it doesn't matter if they don't agree with you. You don't care. In fact, there's one time in our marriage, and I can tell you exactly, we were on Palmetto Avenue. Not Palmetto Avenue, that's the wrong city. Palmerado Avenue, driving our car, and Amy turns to me and says, if you agree with me about everything, then one of us isn't necessary.
Okay, this is when we're dating.
And we were dating, yeah. And I turned back to you and said, oh, we'll have plenty of time to disagree, right?
Yes.
But to me, that gives you the example, the difference of courting, right? Because you're in this middle of this great exercise of being in love and the Eros energy all around you. And so little things like this just don't bother you. And I'll give into that because, man, I'm so attracted to her and I'm so in love with her. And that's all the courting part.
Yeah.
And then you get married and you don't have a plunger and your toilet's clogged.
And you're in a fight. And one person thinks there is this right way and the other thinks there is this right way, and now you're stuck.
Literally, I could have been back for my parents in 2 minutes and the toilet would have been unplugged.
So, like Esther Perel says, relationship dilemmas are not problems to solve. They are paradoxes to manage. And by paradox, we mean that there is a certain level of uncertainty, or that in a paradox, you may have to hold two truths that are two conflicting truths at the same time. And that can be really difficult. Or another common paradox I see is the more you try to make your spouse happy, the more likely they are to be unhappy. And so there's this paradox of, I think I'm doing this to make them happy, and yet the opposite is happening. So all these kinds of paradoxes.
I'll even say it in a different way. The more you want trying to make your spouse desire you, the less desirable you become.
Yes. So lots of paradoxes, lots of things going on.
I think Jennifer says it in a really way that's good on this part too. She's
Jennifer
like
Finlayson-Fife.
Jennifer Finlayson-Fife. She says intimacy is a measurement of how much of that dissonance you can handle.
The uncertainty.
The uncertainty. How you can sit in that and be okay in that and still be connected to your spouse. And that's the measure of how intimate you can be. And she talks about how all of us talk about wanting to be intimate and be close to each other, but we really don't want to give what it's necessary to do that. And it really is staying in this dissonance of this paradox and being able to sit in it and understand that you are in it and you don't have to resolve it.
And I was leading a couples cohort this last week, and our whole conversation and topic of discussion was about, to the extent that you can tolerate the uncertainty or the unknown, or maybe just the undefinedness of what may happen in intimacy or in your marriage, is usually the amount that you will actually be able to be intimate. Because Eros energy is undefined, it is uncertain, can't be contained. There has to be a high tolerance for that undefinedness, for that uncertainness. And that is often the anxiety we're talking about. Like, you have to be willing to tolerate that this isn't guaranteed. This isn't predefined. This isn't going to go in a certain way. It is going to be free flowing. And
let's just go back and say, this is completely different than what we were taught and thought. Right?
Yes.
Because of our underlying culture and the basis of it, the certainty was supposed to be there, especially around marriage. If I go back to talk about all the shame and everything around my sexuality, this thing of getting married gave me certainty around it. Like, it was like, you get married and it's all taken care of. And that certainty was there. And I was told that over and over again. And so we're set up in a way that it's so drastically different than what we're talking about. And you can be sitting there scratching your head right now. What are you talking about? We get married so that we can merge together and become one and think the same and make each other happy. It's kind of been all falsely taught to you because that's not the way to be intimate.
I think there is, like we talk about the domestic and the erotic, there is a level of structure or certainty or knownness in the love compartment of marriage, or in the domestic part of marriage. And then in the erotic or the desire part of marriage, there is that level of uncertainty, undefined, unknown. And so it is really, again, the paradox holding both certainty and uncertainty, love and desire, structured and unstructured, right? Being able to hold the paradox of both of those at the same time.
No matter what bucket we're sitting in, because I had been told that the certainty had been there and that I needed to have the certainty, I spent my whole emotional efforts protecting my ego. And my ego is saying that there's a certain way, and when you do that certain way, then you're right. And so no matter what we came into as a married couple, I mean, it was definitely a domestic task to get a plunger to unplug the toilet, right? That was not an erotic task that I know of. Doesn't turn me on to think about.
No.
Definitely a domestic task, but we thought we had a right way because that's the structure that we were under, that there was a certainty of a right and a wrong, and it was black and white, and that was it.
And that's what will keep you stuck. Because each of you will be like, I'm right and you're wrong.
Right.
And if there's no wiggle room in that, you'll both be in this power struggle and get further and further into your separate camps. And it doesn't go anywhere. It
And
just
that's
gets
why I
stuck.
became a validation whore, right?
Right.
Because I was looking to protect that ego of being right.
Mhm.
And I needed someone else to tell me I was right and to validate that I was right. Because if I wasn't, then there was something drastically wrong with me. And it was this extremeness, right? It couldn't be like, oh, we have separate viewpoints and there might be some middle ground. No, it was like, this is right, this is wrong. And you have got to tell me that I'm right.
Uh-huh. So I'm thinking of so many coachings that I had this week. Thinking of one coaching in particular where this woman was dating a man they'd been dating for quite a while, and she was trying to decide whether to go all in or move on. And there was certainty and uncertainty on both sides. Thinking of another coaching with a client who was facing some really difficult health challenges and facing the uncertainty of their own, maybe more morality. And were they going to stay engaged in life to the level of the uncertainty, or were they going to live small that seemed more certain? I'm thinking of another couple who was just rebuilding some friendship. And so there was a little level of like love and certainty returning. And did they want to now dip their toes into the uncertainty of intimacy, opening up their sexuality again, and watching them balance back and forth on these two sides? And I think one thing that marriage relationships really ask us to expand in is this capacity to hold these paradoxes, to hold these uncertainties, to hold these differences at the same time. And that can be really challenging.
Okay.
I also at the same time came across a little practice from Esther Perel, something that she gives to her clients to help them learn how to raise their tolerance or their capacity to be in uncertainty. So I thought I might share it with all y'all today.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a practice to allow yourself to open up to contradictions, dissonances, paradoxes, and to still actually stay present with yourself, not having to be in the black and white, the either or. And the first step is to just get very comfortable, to close your eyes. I always say close your eyes because that shuts off the outside information. Our eyes take in so much information just from being open. So just by shutting them, it helps you go a little bit more inward into your body. Really, usually no other purpose than that, but like reducing the amount of intake you're getting in. And then to identify the two truths or the two contradictions that you're holding. So she shares, like my client, for example, one truth might be, I don't want to lose this relationship. And the other truth might be, but this relationship has some major flaws that make me wonder if I should leave. This was exactly where my client was last week. Do I stay or do I go? And so the next step after identifying those two contradictions or those two different truths is just to relax. Inhale through your nose, expand deeply into your body and chest, and really just relax. And then name the first statement or the first truth. I don't want to lose this relationship. And let it just be. And then exhale. And then take another deep breath. And name the other truth. And this time start with the word and. This relationship has some major flaws that make me wonder if I should leave. And then exhale. And then to repeat this 3 times where you're inhaling, naming both truths, both contradictions, and then exhale. Inhale, naming both truths or contradictions or the paradox, and then exhale. And after you've done this at least 3 times, to just notice what's going on inside of you. How are you feeling? What's coming up for you? Are you noticing any type of shift, any type of acceptance? How do you feel as you're holding these two truths? Are you able to sit with both of them without judging them? Do you find yourself wanting to choose the right one? Do you find yourself being able to see how there's truth in both of them? Kind of what is your experience there? And the purpose of this exercise isn't, again, to get to a right answer, but it is to allow yourself to be able to expand in this capacity to hold the contradictions, to tolerate the uncertainty, or to tolerate the contrast. Because so often in marriage, what we're asked to do is tolerate the contrast. One is a spender, one is a saver, one wants to stay home, one wants to go out. One wants to have big vacations. One wants no vacations. One wants lots of sex. One wants, the other wants.
One wants to buy a plunger. One wants to borrow a plunger.
Right. It's these contradictions. Can you actually sit in them and without forcing yourself to try and get to the right answer or even making it a problem, but allowing both of them to sit within you and then notice where are you at then? The crazy thing about this is I often find that in holding both of them, something else emerges. Either an expanded capacity in you, expanded insight,
And more clarity.
More clarity in one direction or the other about maybe what might be more or less true, or maybe what you're believing that isn't entirely true. And again, I'm not pushing towards a right or towards anything, but just that you start to see yourself expand as you make room for both. And that's what marriage is often asking us to do, is to make room for you and another. It doesn't have to be my way of only loading the dishwasher. There can be my very structured, organized way and Greg's haphazard, wild
You don't like
way.
how it works. I never knew this hurts.
And so on and so forth. Can the dishes still be loaded in both ways? And is the world going to go on? Like, I'm talking about little things here, and there's also big things too, but really the capacity to be able to hold that, to think outside of one narrow perspective or mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting because this all goes back to the crux of us understanding how our emotions work and being able to deal with our mind and the emotions around them, right? Because this paradox in wanting to have a right answer is what causes our minds to fire off, to bring us in places we want to go, to react instead of think about and not be reactive. Again, we grew up in the system. That's what we were taught. And our and our minds are really good at finding these things, right? And being wrapped around these issues and being able to give warnings and taking us to places that this is going to be the end of us. The extremes are what our body tries to do to get our attention and say, do something about this. And so this practice really is putting us in a place to stop, think, and take our own emotions to be able to process through them. I think another great thing we talk about all the time, and this is for me, is doing our emotional check-ins, right? This is the same thing that happens where we've isolated as a single person to go through these paradoxes and bring clarity around them and being able to hold both of them in place. I think the emotional check-in for me has taught me to be able to, in real time, listen, hear the paradoxes of things I don't agree with, and process through my own emotions around it so that I can sit in that. It really does change everything I do and the way that I look at it. I talk about how I was so dogmatic in everything in my life, and there had to be a right and a wrong, and there was only one way, and it was my way. And how now I can hold room. Does it still get uncomfortable? Absolutely. Is there still a way that you tend to view things? And should you just drop that and say that your viewpoint is not important? No. Your viewpoint's still important. It's still the way that you view life, and you should go about life. But holding room to know that there's more out there, not just with your spouse, but in general, that people see things in a much different way. And there could be a multitude of ways to solve a problem or come about something. Just opens you up to so much more peace. It's almost the opposite. You were taught about the peace would come if you just did the right thing.
Like the peace was,
and that's where the
tied into
anxiety comes from, right?
Yeah.
And so that brings you anxiety because you're trying to just do the right thing, and you're so anxiety.
And it brings a lot of rigidness and small-mindedness, emotional immaturity, because you won't sit in the discomfort of holding contradictions or being able to look at them or be curious
or that they
about
couldn't
them.
even exist, right? You just want to dismiss them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the opposite. when you're able to hold that and know that they're there and be curious about them, that brings the peace. Because I'll tell you a little something that I know is true. You're never going to do that one right thing. Life will not happen exactly how it's supposed to in this box that you've painted, because it's life. And especially if we get back to it, if you try to put eros and intimacy into that box and your eros energy into it, it is not going to be there. Your sex life, your intimacy life will die. And it might be a slow death and it might be a quick death, but it will die because you're trying to control what's inside that box. And that does not bring peace at all.
Yeah. I'm thinking of another couple I coached, and just the recognition that one was landing more neurotypical and the other one neurodivergent, and kind of running in two different operating systems, which again, we're always navigating differences. But if you are believing that your mind or your operating system is the only way and that your perspectives and your assumptions are right, you're going to miss out on the depth and interest and just possibility of being able to collaborate with another. And so this ability to say, it's okay that my spouse doesn't view or think or feel the same way about this. And even in this exercise, as you go through and practice just holding these dissonances, it's also really interesting to go to your spouse and say, what are the contradictions that you feel? What are you grasping with or trying to make room for two different things? And to not only open it up in yourself, but to open it up with them.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know you hated how I did the dishes.
I don't hate the way you did the dishes.
You said you hated it. You can't take it. It's so true that we get so stuck in this place that we can't hold this, and that brings anxiety to us, as we talked about, and being able to sit back and be able to be curious enough to know that there is different perspectives, and that's okay. To know that the world's not going to be just the same way. I think we go back to the neurodivergent, and even to have to put a label on someone that they're not normal is a sociological bound. It's a society bound. Like, who defines what's normal and who's not, right? And to that person that's neurodivergent, I'm putting quotes, you can't see it, neurodivergent, that's normal to them. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that makes it abnormal is because society has defined a certain thing for normalcy. And I think that was eye-opening and mind-opening part about watching our son go through the being diagnosed as neurodivergent, was just the point of, it was because he'd so stuck on, this is what normal looks like and I'm not, that got him to like the suicidal thoughts, took him to such a bad place. But he can be totally able to work through it and live in a very thriving life when he finally said, no, this is my superpower. This is who I am. I look at things differently, and some people won't look at them that way. That's not a problem. That's just reality. And so I think even working with the neurodivergent and has helped me see that normalcy is just a label that humans have put on there to be able to try to understand things. And to them, that's their normal.
Yeah. I think one last little thought I'm thinking of, and this kind of goes back to your dishes comment. At one point, I was there judging. And I think we have this judge in all of us that is like, there is a right way to do this. There is a right way to fold the clothes, do the dishwasher, pay the bills, spend the money, have sex, whatever it is. And that's the one you got to watch out for, because the judge is also very punishing. And the judge is also morally superior. And the judge likes to think that they're right and that there is no other opinion. I think the difference between that and what we're saying here is the ability to open up to curiosity, to open up to more perspective. Of course, you can still be discerning, but it's without the moral superiority. It's without the ego. It's without the need that I have to be right to know that I'm going to be okay. And that's what we're talking about, like opening up to a broader expanse. I think it's good for us just as a human being, and also within the context of a marriage.
I don't know if it's because of the context that we were raised in, but for some reason we feel like if you vary from this and think, even open your mind to think there's something else, then you're done, right? Straight to hell. It's over. You're going to be sad. Your family's ruined. And so we paint that line so thin and we don't leave room to think about it. But I've come to find out as human beings, when you open your mind and you think of other people and their viewpoints and you're curious about them, doesn't mean you go run off and do things that you don't want to do that's against your own moral bearings, right? It's just the opposite, because now you're willing to say and weigh things and say, what's good for my own integrity? What do I think's right and wrong for me? And you start building this character of who you really are based on your own personal integrity.
Doesn't have to be right or above or
Right.
superior.
Or superior.
That integrity doesn't require someone else to be below you in order to be okay.
Yeah. You don't have to point down and say that I'm right and above you. We were doing a church class. We were invited to a church to talk about this. And when I got to this part, people started almost having heart attacks. And the leader of the congregation was like, wait, I got to explain this because I don't want everyone to come be mad at me. I was just trying to explain to them, do I think there's things that are really bad? Yes. Do I think murder's wrong? Yes. Do I think sexual abuse is terrible? Yes. And so when I say that there's no right or wrong or there's other viewpoints, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's no absolute in the way that we perceive this, and that we need to decide for ourselves what is good for our own moral beings and what do we have in our own integrity. And I had to explain that really carefully in this church setting because I saw the pitchforks starting to come out at me, which is fine. I've taken several in that setting before they got run off.
We're not saying you have to let go of your moral compass.
No.
But if you open your mind, you'll find that maybe your moral compass has a lot more understanding or capacity to be discerning rather than just to be judging.
Yep. And instead of using it to judge, using it to discern and understand how it is impacting you. Mm-hmm. I talk about this time and this conversation I had that I thought that was just fabulous when I got picked up to the airport by a transgender. And it was like 45 minutes in Washington, D.C. to get to the airport. I was in this car. And my past self would have been so judging of this person that I would have sat in quietness and done nothing. I wouldn't have talked to them because I would have been judging them all the time. And we had this beautiful conversation, this amazing, beautiful conversation. And it was all around about, hey, we see the world differently and that's okay. And this is my experience. And these are the hard things that I've come from. And this is what I see. And that's how I see. And it was such an enjoyable 45 minutes of conversation and eye-opening and connection that I would have totally missed out on before, because I would have been superior judging this person, even not knowing anything about them.
I think this is what our children really taught us. They came into the world with very different wirings, operating systems, understandings, all these beautiful things. And because we loved them, because we love them, it asked us to open our minds. To expand. And that was kind of scary.
It was kind of scary? It was frightening.
It was like earth-shattering, deconstructing scary. But I think the thing that really motivated us is we said they mean enough to us for us to be willing to step into the uncertainty, to be willing to listen, to be willing to see where we might be blind or what we don't yet understand. I think marriage asks that too.
Every day. And that's why it's such a growing thing. And let's get to the happy side, right?
Okay.
When you can get to that point where you can leave space for the other person and you can be curious about them, that is what lights the eroticism on fire and builds it to an overwhelming peak of place where you've been thinking you want it to go for this whole time, but you've been destroying it in your rigidness. You've been destroying it in I have to be rightness. You're being destroying it in the lack of room to give the other person. And so what we're saying is open up, be curious, figure out what the conflicts are in you, like we talked about, ask what the conflicts are in your spouse, and give yourself space, both of yourself space to understand that. And when that space is given, Eros is what usually fills that space. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty good.
It's good. Although it's a little scary before Eros comes in. There's like this uncertain, undefined, you sort of feel like you're living at the edge. And I think that's where a lot of couples, ourselves included, different times have turned back in a way.
We got to that point and we were so scared. We're like, we can't do that.
Oh, we need to go back to certainty. There's got to be a right answer. And some expert somewhere must have said what it is. So we're just going to
We're going to keep listening to podcasts. We're going to keep on reading things. There's someone out there that's going to tell us the right answer.
It is really uncertain to step into the unknown. It is hard to step into that uncertainty, that unknown, to the ambivalence of differences, to the contradictions, to places that you may have thought one thing. And can you open your mind enough just to see? Again, you don't always have to agree. Opening your mind or listening or being curious doesn't
always agreeing is almost the other side of that coin. It's just as bad as always being.
I think so many couples though are afraid to listen because they're like, listen means agreement. And I'm like, no.
We probably disagree on more things now than we ever have because we're willing to voice what our true opinions are and not trying to protect each other of it, right?
Again, and that's part of Eros, two whole distinct people that we're not merging to become one, but we are building a bridge between us, and that space between us is where the Eros lives. And that's what we're trying to help other couples expand in. Be your whole full self and be open to the space in between you.
Yep. We can see the difference in our lives. We really can. And it's not for us to get up and say, look, we're different or better. No, not at all. What we're trying to say is that we've been through the painful process. We've come out the other end. We mess up all the time and go back to it. And we learn from that and come back to the other side. We've had a lot of good people in our lives that have helped push us towards this and help us understand this. And we were looking for that perfect answer and we didn't find it. But what we found is people that could help us understand what our minds were doing and what our emotions were doing and how we could use those to open them up and give space to this concept. Just even understanding that marriage was a paradox. Like we had no idea. We thought there was something awfully wrong with us and that our marriage was completely broken because we were living in this paradox. And the truth was that we were completely normal and that we were living in a marriage. And that was the answer, right?
Right. Hey, this is what marriage
congratulations, you're married. Because we were told so differently that it was going to be different. Yeah. And we held that belief for almost 2 decades. And it was miserable.
Yes.
And so we were blessed to find those people to help us. And that's why it's such a blessing for us to be able to be on this side to help other couples see that.
And again, it's not like this destination. It's about knowing like a process or that this is what happens.
Just knowing that it exists, like knowing that the paradox exists was like earth shattering and changing in our lives. And it led us to the things to help knowing that why I was trying to extract validation. That I was a validation whore. That was keeping Amy from being able to be intimate with me and choose me. And that's all that I wanted. Like it was the crux of everything is getting out of this. It has to look this way for our marriage to be right and normal to we were living a normal marriage. We needed to learn how to be successful in that paradox. It can change your lives.
Right. You weren't a problem to be solved, nor was I. But we were learning how to live in the differences and the paradox of our differences. And that's where the peace is.
Yep. So please, we would love to help you. We have had several consults come out of the podcast lately, and they've just been wonderful to talk to you all out there. It's like we have all these friends out there listening, and we know they're there, and we really want to meet you and have the opportunity to sit down and just see where you're at. See if there's any tidbits that we can give you, any pointers that we can show you, any direction. That's why I want you to sign up for the consult. So please go up onto langfordlifecoaching.com. There is a button on every single page, and it's there for a reason because it's so important. Go click on that free consult button and set one up. Amy and I have been busy, so hopefully you can get a slot lately, but it's been filling up fast. But we would love, love, love to talk to you. So please go do that.
Yes, please. And we'll be putting out the link soon to join this group community. You can always join our email list, and you can always also send us any questions or topics that you'd like to hear us talk about. We're happy to answer and discuss any of those as well.
And until next time,
keep undressing your intimacy.
Bye-bye.